Okay, so we've started with our little bit of coffee. Now there's a couple more things that you can do, and you can do this a bit later anyway, is get a few little dribbles going. Dribbles aren't always easy. I think actually I might actually put a bit more on there and a little bit more water. Just be careful because your paper might not be strong enough, but it's a quite nice way to add to that. Now the other thing that you can do, I'll just get a smaller brush, is you can use a little bit of coffee just like the granules. Now I'm using instant coffee, and you can mix that up on your plate or on whatever you have, and you can get a much stronger thing. You can actually just use that as just as it is to paint with instead of using paint to add a little bit more detail if you want. Don't know really what I'm doing at the moment, just trying to have a little play. You can also use tea, but it might be quite hard for you to get some solid lines with tea and get tea dark enough to work. So anyway, that's coffee. Have a little play with it. It's a really nice way to get quite a subtle background going for working on top of. I can hear my alarm going off in the background. Not sure about that. So I'm a big fan of paint and newspaper. So a little bit of white paint on my brush. I'm going to get that on there. Excuse the vacuum cleaner in the background. Some white paint on, and then I'm going to use a bit of newspaper. I really like to have the print side down, and I'm going to stick that to the newspaper. Okay, you don't need glue. And a little bit more of that. Let's see. Some of those bits that I'd really like to keep hold of because I like the way that the coffee has, the effect that the coffee's had. Okay. It's a really nice way to build up a surface if you just want to do a painting. That's fine too. You can glue paper down too and then paint on top of that. I can see there's still a bit more paint up here that I can stick that to. And when it is a little bit dry, you can peel the paper off and you will be left with this gorgeous print. Which I think is kind of cool. You can be really particular about the types of words that you choose as well, if you want that to be part of your artwork. Okay, you don't have to be too fussy. If you get left with little bits of paper, that's fine too. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get your brush, because we don't want to leave that as our top layer, and we're going to take a bit of paint off and we're going to scumble over the top. Now, as I may even get my coffee brush again and a little bit of coffee go over the top of that too. And that seems to be lifting it off a bit much. I might have to wait for it to dry a little bit further. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more of that paint on and newspaper, and then I'll come back. What I'm going to do is that we forget to work all the way to our edges. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in a little bit more of this coffee wash, just to make sure that I have addressed everything. You don't need to do that all at the start, so long as you think about it when you're completing your image later. Don't just leave things hovering in the middle. I'm working on quite a large thing at the moment, mainly so that we can see it quite easily in the video. I'm thinking I'll probably start to add a little bit of imagery, and I don't know if you can quite see it, but I've started to draw in a little bit of an image, and I'm just sketching it out. So I'm going to try and attempt to create a spool of thread, because this is what I've been doing during my lockdown period. Now, because it's a cylinder, I'm going to have to add some light somewhere, so I'm just going to add a little bit of white paint, and I'm going to add that to the middle, and I'm going to do a mixture of wet paint, because I want to I want to just see some of that, those beautiful brush strokes, okay? I want someone to know that I was here, that I made this painting. It's not just something I printed off the internet. Again, for scumbling and dry brush, load up your brush and then wipe quite a bit of the paint off onto some newspaper, okay? And you can soften the edges. Now to add the shadow, I'm going to try, I don't know how successful it's going to be, but I'm going to try just adding a little bit of pen. You can see I'm a pretty messy artist, but that's okay. Every shape and size. So I'm going to start adding in with my pen, and I want to see if that will mix nicely with the paint. And I should be able to wet that a little bit. You can see down here. It's not really going on because the coffee is still wet. And we'll just keep going. So I'll put a little bit of water on my brush. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. Might not be quite inky enough. Oh yeah, that's mixing a little bit. You can see it's mixing a little bit with the white paint that I already had, and you're getting this little bit of grey coming across. Okay, so I'm going to work on that a little bit longer. That's coming along quite nicely. I think it's really important at this stage to have a limited palette. Don't use too many colours, and that will keep things from getting too confusing. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more paint. I'm going to slowly start to create my background. So much paint on there, I'm going to scumble that away. Don't worry if you make mistakes. This is the great thing about mixed media, okay? Okay, so we're just going bit by bit. So this is just a little bit abstract. This is, I'm taking inspiration in the background from my old sewing machine table, which you might see in the background. And they've got these lovely ornate kind of squares here. So obviously I'm not going to spend all that time doing those ornate little squares, but I'm just going to add them into my composition to add a tiny bit of interest. I don't want to cover everything up that's underneath either, so try and spend a bit of time. Quite often like to work into my paint with a pencil. My paper's getting pretty wet at the moment. You might want to let it dry for a bit. Let's see, maybe get in with my pen again, and I quite like that it kind of doesn't pick up everything straight away because it is a little bit wet, and we're not kind of worried about that too much. We want to make sure there's a little horizon line in there so we know that it is somewhere, that it's not just some random stuff just floating in the universe. It's worked really well. That I love is that this little piece of newspaper here has created this beautiful little shadow. So you know, think about that. As you're starting to get your create your image, you can then add a little bit more in for highlights. So as it's starting to dry, you might like, oh, I know with those little dots I'll use paint. So paintbrush, a little bit of paint loaded up. Quite often if I want to get a bit of a pointy brush, I'm not actually very fussy about what I'm using. You could use a skewer from the kitchen. You could use toothpicks or an old toothbrush. If you can use a pair of scissors and chop a bit off, okay, and just leave the ones that you want. I might add a little bit more detail later with the pen. I'll probably now, because I want the light kind of coming through here, is a bit more scumbling, just to create a sense of the light hitting there. Okay, might need to let that dry just a little bit further. You can see I haven't quite got in there yet with the water, so that's still quite obvious. And this is kind of what's known as, I kind of like to call it, it's like your handwriting, it's like your signature. It's these little highlights here and there. Okay, so, you know, don't get too caught up. It doesn't have to be super precious. You can add those details in later. We just want that to now start to kind of pop out with that little bit of extra contrast. I'm getting paint all over my computer, that's good. So I'm just going to add just a few little, just a hint that there's something there, that we've got a little bit of shape going on. You know, it's a really nice free way to work, and I think sometimes it forces you to, you know, to not get too precious and not make it too perfect all the time. Okay, and that's the beauty of working with mixed media. You know, you can make lots of mistakes, but you can cover them up really easily too. So, okay. Now, I don't know if you can see, hopefully you can, but over here, some of the paper stuck completely to my work, so I'm just going to scumble a bit of white paint over that because I don't want that sticking out so much. A bit more wet paint, let it dry a little bit. And who knows, I might kind of start to add a little bit of an image over there. I might get back in there with my pen. And a little bit more over here, a little bit more shadow. Now, if you've got a really nice inky pen, or even maybe a felt pen, might work quite well. There's a brush without too much paint on it. This one will do. Then you might get a little bit more ink happening from your pen. Can be quite fun. And there, my friends, is the beginning of a mixed media work. That's simple. Can't wait to see yours. Okay, bye.